Okay, so let's get started back. You can see on the screen here the drawing that we just did, and on the other side of the screen is the ANSI A Form 3. So for you guys, I'm going to put it up on the screen, the big screen, and it's going to be on your monitor. So Israel, can you see us at home? I'm sorry, I had my sound off. Did you say you could see us? All right, that's okay. So on each of our drawings, we're going to have to put a title block. And this title block can be a different form depending on what size paper. So we're using an ANSI A size paper, the 8.5 by 11. And we determined it's not quite 8.5 by 11 on this grid paper, but most grid paper that you're going to use will be 8.5 by 11. And since the paper is 8.5 by 11, then we want to do a border that is also going to be copacetic to that paper size. So if we look at the dimensions here of this ANSI Form 3 title block, we see that it's 8 inches by 10.5 inches. So if our paper is 8.5 by 11, then we know that we're only a 1/2 inch difference from the size of our paper. So what we want to do is share that 1/2 inch on both sides. So just like we centered our drawing, we want to actually center our border as well. So on here, we know we have a 1/2 inch difference. So if we divided that 1/2 inch by 2, that's going to be a 1/4 inch. So on all sides of our paper, we're going to go in a 1/4 inch to create this border. Well, we know on graph paper that our box is a 1/4 inch. So to save ourselves a little bit of hassle here, what we want to do is just use our box line. So on this side of my drawing, and you guys can see, I don't really have a full box there, but that's okay. I'm just going to come in to the line that has, that's closest to the edge of my paper. Now on this side, it's very, very close. So if I zoom in on one side here, you can see that's not even a 1/2 a box. So probably on this side, I will come, maybe like right here, okay? If you guys can see my mark. So here's the edge of my paper. So this border line is not going to fall on a grid line. Now I could just say, all right, I'm just going to use this line. And that's okay. If y'all want to do that and be on the line on the grid paper, that is more than okay, because when we do board drawings, we're actually just going to measure over that 1/4 of an inch, so we're going to be accurate. But if you want to just go to the first line that has, even if it's not a full box, because if we were going a 1/4 inch, we'd have to go a full box. But for us, on this grid paper especially, since it's not fully at 8.5 by 11, we're just going to go over to that full box, okay? So all the way around, your first step is going to be just to draw a rectangle all the way around this object. So down here at the bottom, I really do almost have a full box at the bottom, so that one's going to be accurate at least. But like I said, for this grid paper, we'll just go to the first full line that you have. So all the way around, we're going to draw what we call a border line. And we do have holes at the top here. It's okay, just go above those holes. Not all the graph paper that we're going to use has holes. I wanted to go ahead and use up these at the beginning because these sketches, since they're your very first sketches, they're probably not going to be as good quality as some of the other sketches you're going to do. And this is just some paper that I had, so we're going to use it up. And then when you start doing some sketches, probably next week, we'll use some of the better graph paper. So far, this is what my border looks like. And all I really did is go around. It's supposed to be a 1/4 inch in on each side, but since we're using graph paper, I just come to the first full line. And that's the start of our border. Now, if I zoom in, if I come over here to Google Classroom and zoom in to where I can see some of the title block, this bottom part is the title block. So the very bottom line on our drawing, which if you can see my mouse, this is the bottom line of the title block, and over here this is the bottom line of the title block. So we have a 2-layer title block here where we have this one line and then another line, and those lines, you can't see the dimension here. Let me see. Yeah, I put it over here. So this is 3/8 of an inch and this is 3/4 of an inch. So basically we're going up a box and a half and then another box and a half to create these 2 lines for the title block. So from the very bottom line of our border, we're going to go up 3/8 of an inch, which is a box and a half, and then another box and a half. So this line will come in like in the middle of a box. So what does that look like? I'm going to zoom in again. So down here at the bottom, I'm going up. This would be 1 full box, so my line is going to start right there in the middle of the next box, and then I'll have another line here. So all the way across your paper to your border line, it's going to start on our border line and go all the way across. So here's, a really long line that you're not following a grid line. So do a series of short strokes and keep your eye on where you're going. And what we're creating here is the title block. So in the end, that's the first line, and then we have another one which actually does fall on a box or on a line of the grid line. So it's going to be a little easier to make. And at the sides, it stops where your border line is. It doesn't go to the end of the paper. You want to stop where your border line is on both sides. I'll zoom in a little bit more on that so you can see how I've got it stopped there.
Does it matter which drawing we're doing right now?
What was your question?
Which drawing we're supposed to be doing?
Well, you're going to put a border on all the drawings. So if you started on a different drawing other than the one that we're on, that's fine. Because it will be the same ANSI A Form 3 title block that we put on. So I'm going to zoom out again. So now we have our border and our title block lines, but we still have a few more that we have to put in. So if we look at Google Classroom, we can see that there are certain items that we need to put in our title block. And the first one is going to be the name of our school. So obviously we're not a community college, so we're going to replace that with Swofford Career Center. Now the lettering, actually filling in the title block, we're going to do that last. So please don't go ahead and do that. We're going to do it last. But what we want to do right now is go ahead and get these vertical lines in. So this bottom vertical line is 2.25 over to the right if we start at the leftmost border line. So how many boxes is 2.25? Should be 9 boxes. So on our grid paper, we're just going to count over 9 boxes. And we'll make this line go up. And then if we just look at the bottom part, we just go straight across, we know that, okay, this was 4.25, and that line goes in the bottom part and the top part. So how many boxes is 4.25? Should be 17 boxes, correct? So we want to count from the side of the border line here, this first border line, and go over 17 boxes. And remember, that one goes through both the top and the bottom title block line. Okay? So you can see my title block line here, and that vertical line goes through both of them. This one just stays on the bottom. Now we still have a few more of those lines to do, those vertical lines. The next one is 4.87, which is 4 7/8. So that's actually going to land in the middle of the box, but it's probably going to be much easier for us if we just go back the 1 3/8. So counting from the side of our title block, we'll go back 1 3/8 because that line is going to be the same here in the top and the bottom portion of the title block. And then we don't have to count out so many blocks because it's going to be easier to count. This would be 4 boxes in 1 inch, and then 3/8 is going to be another box and a half. So we're going to have 5.5 boxes that we're going to count from this border line to the left. So if we do that, we'll do 5.5 boxes, and then we'll land on the half mark on that one. So our border itself is now finished with those lines. And remember, the border line is actually the darkest line on your paper. I don't want you to color it in, but it is okay if your border line is darker than the rest. Alright, so this is what our border is going to look like when we get it finished. Now we just have to letter everything. So our drawing title, if I toggle back over here in Google Classroom where the drawing was, we can see that the drawing title is Gasket. So that drawing title is what we're going to put in the title block here. So going back and looking at all the things that we need to fill in, this will be the school name, this will be the drawing title. So here we're going to put Gasket, and then we'll put the figure number, which was 4-62. The sheet number is going to be 1 because we only have 1 drawing. Now if we had multiple drawings that had to do with the same object, we could do like sheet 1 of 2 or sheet 2 of 5, so forth. But we only have 1 sheet, so we're just going to put sheet 1 there. And then drawn by, we'll actually put in the drawn by with the colon, and where the X's are is going to be your name. and then the date, we'll put the date in there, and the scale. So what is the scale? We talked about scaling in class. Did we make this object the same size as it was in the picture that we took it from? We did, right? We actually made the same size diameters, and it's 1-to-1 scale. That means it's the same in real life as it would be on our paper. So we're going to put 1:1 there. Now, I don't want you to start just yet because we still have to talk about lettering. And we did some notes on lettering before. What is our letter height? Does anybody remember our letter height? 1/8 of an inch, which is really, really small because one of these boxes is 1/4 of an inch. So our lettering height is actually half of a box. So if we were looking at this, and I'm going to go ahead and just make this bigger so everybody can see it. If we're looking at 1/8 of an inch, then that means we have to write in less than a box, which is basically half a box. So we see a half a box here. That difference right there is half a box. So that's our lettering height between this line that I've created and this line. But we also want to center it up and down. So if you'll notice, each of these title block boxes are 3/8 of an inch tall. And that gives us 1/8 on the top, 1/8 on the bottom, and then 1/8 to do our letters. So we want to center it up and down vertically, but we also want to try to center it horizontally if we can within that box. So we're going to get a little bit better about this as we go, but this first time, just try to keep your letter height what it's supposed to be, and then you'll get better and better at knowing how far you need to go in to center it horizontally too. One thing I want to point out before we start lettering is if we have a center line or anything else, we don't want it to go over our border. So mine was a little bit over that. We really don't even want it touching. So I'm going to trim that up just a little, and that way our border is nice and clear so we can communicate effectively. So let's start out. We're going to start with just putting Swofford Career Center where the school goes. We do have a line that's going to kind of guide us where the letter should sit, because this grid line is where we need to start. So this is going to be all caps. Remember, you guys did a lot of lettering yesterday. So all caps. And you want to keep it 1/8 of an inch high, which is half a box. So you're probably going to have to go a little bit slower than what you normally would if you were writing. So go ahead and put in Swofford Career Center. And remember, the space between your letters is going to be about the size of your pinky or the letter O. Remember, like the steps in creating good single stroke vertical Gothic letters. Alright, so you can see on mine, I'm pretty much centered up and down, but I have a little less space here than I do here. As you go, you'll figure out, hey, I need to go over just a little more, and I'll end up being centered. You'll get better and better at that. The next box on top here is going to be the name of the part. In this case, it's going to be Gasket. So I am actually starting more towards the center because Gasket is not going to be very large. are very long as far as centering from right to left. And let me zoom in on that so you can see how to spell it. It's Gasket. And then that last box is going to be our figure number. So if we were to write out figure, it's probably not going to fit. So we're just going to abbreviate that. We're going to put FIG. And then we can just put 4-62. And then on the bottom, we'll start back from the left and just work our way to the right. The first box was supposed to be scale, so we're actually going to write out scale. Now notice here I don't really have a line to start on, but I do have the grid line here, which would be the top of my letters, because now I've still got to center it vertically, so the grid line is going to be the top of my letters. So when I start this, I'm going to start my letters from the top, and I just want to make sure that I'm trying to keep those 1/8 of an inch tall. And I will put the colon there, so I'll put scale with the colon, and then I'm going to do 1, and you can do a little fancy 1 if you want to, but it's going to be 1 to 1. So that looks much larger than the first one, so I need to be uniform. So scale is 1 to 1. It looks like on the camera this is still out, but on my paper it looks better than it does on the camera. And then the next box was the date. So we're actually going to write date with the colon. And then today's date is 1/13/22. And then that third box over, we're going to have our name, so we're going to put drawn by. With the colon, and then your name. And remember to keep everything all caps. This is why we practiced yesterday. And if this were an actual board drawing, we would have guidelines to keep our height correct. But on here, just kind of eyeball it. And then the last one is going to be the sheet number. So we're going to put sheet. With the colon, and we're just going to put 1. So I'm going to zoom out so you can see my finished product here. So in the title block, those are the items that need to be in each block. And that first one is it's a little tilted up, but it says scale. Our scale is 1 to 1, meaning it's full scale, same size on our paper as it is in real life. And then you can fill out the rest of those. Now your border, if we look at the entire drawing finished, your border is going to be placed on all of your drawings. So every drawing you do, whether it's a board drawing, a sketch, or even when we get to AutoCAD, you're going to have to create a border. Now when we get to AutoCAD, we'll create our border and we'll end up making a template later on. But this is something that you have to kind of remember to put time in whenever you're creating these drawings. You say, okay, I can do a drawing in 30 minutes. Well, it might take you 10 minutes to do a title block. So your drawing time is actually 40 minutes instead of just the 30, because it's not just the object that we're drawing. We have to fully label it. So borders and title blocks are very important. So what you're going to do for the rest of the class period today, and we'll work on this tomorrow as well, is put borders on these 3 sketches that we've started, and then you will letter those properly. And this is something, these are the first 3 things you're going to put in your portfolio. So if you haven't gotten a portfolio notebook, you need to go ahead and do that, and that way we can keep those here and just make sure that all of your drawings are in a safe spot, clean spot, and at the end of the semester you're going to be able to take that portfolio home. So for right now, finish these 3 title blocks, and if you have any cleanup work or you still need to work on finishing up your sketch, you can go ahead and do that in this last few minutes of class. Okay?